Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel where we bring you the most fascinating stories from Hollywood and beyond. Today we're diving into an incredible encounter between Robert Downey Jr. and Pope Francis that shocked the world when it was revealed on live television. Make sure you stay until the end for the full story. The studio lights flickered briefly as the audience buzzed with excitement for tonight's special guest. It wasn't just another late-night talk show. There was something different in the air, especially with the world still processing the recent death of Pope Francis. The host, all charm and polished smile, announced with enthusiasm, "Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Downey Jr." The audience erupted in applause. Some even stood up while others discreetly raised phones to record despite studio policy. Robert entered slowly, dressed in a black suit without a tie, his hair styled meticulously. His expression was courteous but distant. He shook the host's hand gently before sitting down. On the table between them sat a glass of water, a few cards, and curiously, a small golden rosary resting on deep blue velvet. The host tried to start with light banter. "So, Robert, what a time, huh? The Pope has passed and well, you still look as sharp as ever. What's your secret? Holy water?" The audience laughed, but Robert only offered a faint smile. His eyes fell on the rosary and stayed there. The silence grew awkward until the host asked, "Everything okay? You're unusually contemplative tonight." Robert took a deep breath and touched the rosary with his fingertips. "He told me something that night in Rome," he said quietly, almost to himself. "Something no one has ever heard. But maybe today, I need to tell it." The studio fell silent. People weren't sure if this was part of a scripted segment, but the genuine expression on Robert's face made it clear. This wasn't acting. "Tell what?" the host asked, trying to maintain control of the show. Robert looked through him rather than at him. "What Pope Francis entrusted to me. What he didn't want to die with him." The audience remained completely still. The host glanced nervously at the crew, but no instructions came through his earpiece. This wasn't planned. "Years ago," Robert began softly, "I received an invitation that didn't feel real. I was in Florence filming something small, something personal, a European production. One night at my hotel, a man knocked on my door. He didn't say his name, just handed me an envelope sealed with the Vatican's insignia." The audience held their breath. Inside was an invitation, not official, not diplomatic. It was personal, handwritten from Pope Francis himself. The host raised his eyebrows in genuine surprise. Robert continued. It said, "I would like to walk with you in silence among the olive trees." That was it. No cameras, no press, just that. "And you went?" the host asked, barely above a whisper. Robert nodded. "Of course I went." I thought maybe he knew something or wanted to ask for institutional help, a donation, something like that. I didn't know, but what I found was far beyond that. He described being taken by a simple car to a side entrance of the Vatican on a cold night. After walking through a maze of corridors, they emerged into a garden where Pope Francis waited under an old tree. The Pope looked tired, very thin, but his eyes were more alive than anything I've ever seen. The pontiff began talking immediately, explaining he had seen footage of Robert visiting a children's hospital anonymously. He said that gesture of silence spoke louder than any sermon. And then, Robert took a breath, he confessed he felt that God had been silent with him for years. This revelation sent a chill through the studio. Robert continued, he spoke about the burden of Peter's chair, the pain of representing something larger than yourself but feeling utterly alone. He said he prayed, but the heavens felt mute. Looking directly at the audience, with urgency in his eyes, Robert added, he told me, faith survives silence, but I fear that one day it may begin to imitate it. What did you say? The host asked, subdued. Nothing. I didn't say a word. I just listened. And then he pulled an envelope from his pocket. Robert straightened in his chair. It was sealed with red wax, and he said to me, if I don't see you again, this secret must live. Did you open the envelope that night? The host asked, tension rising. Robert shook his head. Number I kept it for years, but now with him gone, I don't know if I can stay silent any longer. The studio was so quiet it was as if time itself had paused. Even the usual soft hum of stage equipment seemed to fade. I kept the envelope hidden for a year, he continued. It traveled with me through every film set, every hotel room. I never opened it. I told myself it wasn't my place. He looked up. But when I heard he had died, something changed. You're going to open it now? The host asked, his voice tight. Without responding, Robert held up the envelope to the cameras, then wordlessly broke the seal. The sound, soft but deliberate, felt louder than anything else in that moment. He unfolded the letter, his hand steady, and began to read. To the man of silence who listens more than he speaks and sees more than he shows. The host turned to face him, and the audience leaned forward, drawn like magnets. Robert continued reading, "This world does not need more saints in gold. It needs men who will carry light through the shadows, cast by those who were supposed to protect it." His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from reverence. I write this with a heart torn between duty and despair. For years I fought behind marble walls. I wore the crown of a fisherman while swimming in a sea of secrets. Robert paused, swallowing hard. There are forces inside this church that I could never cleanse. They wear crosses on their chests but move like wolves. I tried to expose them. I failed. The host opened his mouth to interject but thought better of it as Robert unfolded a second sheet. And at the end of the letter, Robert said, looking up, there was something else. His voice dropped almost to a whisper. It was a vision, a prophecy. The audience murmured as Robert read, "The one who will undo me shall not come from within. He will smile, he will dress as a friend, but he will carry the void." Gasps echoed through the room, and the host appeared stunned. He believed, Robert said slowly, that the collapse of faith would not come from heresy, but from imitation, from someone who seemed pure but brought nothingness. The silence that followed was absolute. I didn't understand it then, Robert added, but after that letter, everything changed. What do you mean? The host asked. Robert met his gaze. I started studying quietly. Faith, power, silence. I spoke to no one. I wanted to understand what he meant. After a pause, he added, and that's when they started coming. Who? Letters. Anonymous warnings telling me never to reveal what I know. Robert explained how he began receiving mysterious threats after his meeting with the Pope. Since then, he had been connecting dots. The deaths of reformist priests, journalists who vanished while investigating Vatican finances, marginal notes in old Bibles, all forming a pattern. He mentioned finding references to sine nomine, Latin for without name, a hidden network of people who no longer trusted the church, but still believed in God. The Pope didn't trust them either, but feared they might be necessary because he knew the church as it was might not survive what was coming. Robert then shared something that shifted everything. And that's when I realized the Pope didn't choose me by chance. The host stared at him. What do you mean? He saw something in me, something I didn't see. Not until the dream. Robert described a powerful dream he had after finally opening the envelope. In it, he stood in a massive abandoned basilica covered in dust. At the altar waited Pope Francis, who told him, "You thought you were only an actor, but I saw the man who carried silence with dignity." Since that night, Robert hadn't been the same. He had stopped working as much and started reading scripture, theology, and mysticism. I've been trying to understand what he wanted me to do, he explained, showing a small worn notebook where he'd been writing thoughts, symbols, and questions every night. Are you afraid? The host asked. I was for a long time, Robert admitted, but now I think maybe the fear was just the first test. He shared another message from his dream. Your silence will be a door, but you must decide if you'll let others walk through it or keep it locked forever. When asked why he was revealing all this on live television, Robert looked straight into the camera. Because truth is quieter than lies, and if I don't say this now, I might never get another chance, he added, and because there's something I need to show you. From his folder, Robert produced photographs from his Vatican visit. In each image, barely visible in the background, was a hooded figure watching from a distance. This same figure appears in 3 other photos sent to me over the years. Always different places, always distant, always watching, he explained. The Pope's last words to me were, "You will see the shadow before you see the light." Robert stood to leave. It's not a threat, it's a warning. Something's coming, and it won't be the church that faces it. It'll be us. At the curtain, he turned back. Faith isn't gone, it's waiting. And silence doesn't mean peace. Sometimes it's the beginning of war. The studio remained silent long after Robert had left, the audience and host alike trying to process what they had just witnessed. Wow, what an incredible story that shook the entertainment world. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of Hollywood's most mysterious encounters, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our future revelations. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on Robert's experience. Was it real, a publicity stunt, or something more profound? Thanks for watching Robert Downey Acts, and we'll see you in the next video.